Bagyashe. Let's pick up here now. The Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities has called for the robust implementation of government's strategic plan to fight gender-based violence. The committee says the Commission for Gender Equality has visited and monitored 50 police stations across the country during the first quarter of the year. They found that the availability of rape kits at certain police stations is still a problem. Let's now take this further. We are joined by Lebogang Motau, founder and CEO of Free World Initiative, an NPO working together with communities to raise responsible men in hopes of eradicating gender-based violence. Let's also bring in the director for Rise Up Against Gender-Based Violence, Vanita Daniels. Good afternoon to you both, and thank you so much for making time for us this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, dear viewers.
All right, Lebogang, perhaps let me start with you. Just reading that intro where we are calling for government to implement robust plans. I mean, we have been here before so many times. On paper, the fight against gender-based violence is solid. Women are not supposed to be killed. Children are not supposed to be harmed. But we are still finding these cases growing in their numbers every year. Talk to me about where you think as a country we've gone wrong.
It is sad. What you're saying is absolutely correct. We keep having the same talks. We keep saying the same things. The president came out in 2018 stating that the government and everyone in the country needs to get involved in the fight against GBVF, and that we're going to put funds towards it. But it is all talk. Unfortunately, we are not seeing much happening in terms of the fight against gender-based violence. All we are seeing is that more and more children and more women are dying. We're seeing that 7 women are dying a day, and that is not acceptable, and not enough is being done. Unfortunately, otherwise we would have seen a change by now.
Vanita, let me bring you into this discussion. I mean, Lebogang mentions that statement that was made by President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2018. In fact, following that summit, he had called for a council to be established. It was going to be the National GBV Femicide Council. I think over R1 billion was set aside for that council. To date, we haven't seen that council take off. Where is government failing its women? Vanita, can you hear me? All right, Lebogang, perhaps let's continue here. I mean, we are seeing today what's happening in Cape Town with the commemoration of Uyinene Mrwetyana's death. She was obviously brutally murdered in 2019. South Africa was in uproar. In fact, the world was globalized, in support of women when this crime came out. I think what was more astonishing at the time was that this was an innocent young student who went to the post office, for crying out loud, and was harmed there in a place where we thought we were safe. And when we look at some of the safe havens that are created in South Africa, including the police station, and we find that even rape kits aren't available for those that are coming to report it, one wonders, what is actually being done on the ground for women.
It is so sad, because if we look at the statistics of who is raping, we're finding that 85% of the rapes are happening by people that we know. So this was a case where it was a stranger, but most of the time it is an intimate partner. It is somebody, a boyfriend, or somebody that we know, a colleague or something, that is committing these crimes. So unfortunately, this is something that we're seeing that something needs to be done. We're also finding that most times that these crimes are happening so close to home that a woman does feel unsafe in any circumstance, as well as with anyone, because these, like I said, 85% is happening with people that we know. But the biggest challenge, like you're saying, is once we decide to report. We know that 1 in 9 rapes are reported, but once we get there, all women are complaining about the attitude that they receive when they get to the police station. Besides the attitude, the lack of services, the lack of competencies when it comes to dealing with a rape victim, and the lack of professionalism when it comes to the police officers when we are trying to report these cases. And I'm speaking as a survivor myself. You get there and you feel like you're being grilled as a survivor. So you don't even feel like the police office itself, the police station, is a safe place for you to go. And then also the lack of conviction rates with 8.6% only being convicted. This is a situation that even if you report the rape, the person is living next door to you or is living down the road from you. So you feeling threatened even after reporting the case. So it is a situation where a lot needs to be done in terms internally. When I say internally, I mean our government officials. We need to train our police officers on how to deal with a rape victim. We need to train the healthcare professionals on how to handle rape care victims so that they can feel safe and they can feel open to come in and report these cases. But not only that, they feel that there's justice that has been served. So beyond the reporting, what can be done? So a lot of work needs to go into this. A lot of training needs to go into this, and we just need to change the whole atmosphere and the whole situation so that a rape victim does feel that if they report, something will come out of it.
Vanita, I hope you can hear me for this one. Now, we know that patriarchy plays a very, very significant role as it comes to gender-based violence and femicide. And men have been invited numerous times to start, coming into the table and also championing this conversation. What do you think should men, what is their role, and what do you think that, they should be coming into the party for at this point?
Look, our organization does behavioral change programs, and we've recently, for the last year and a half, been focusing specifically on men in terms of trying to address the issues around patriarchal social norms and standards and attitudes and values. And we've been running a program that we call Tavern Dialogue. So we're talking with men in taverns about gender-based violence. But we've been focusing specifically around trying to change the attitudes around gender-based violence. And so, the previous speaker spoke about, systemic issues that needs to be dealt with in terms of government, in terms of the police, in terms of healthcare workers. But what we need to do is we need to prevent GBV. And so we need to be talking to perpetrators and would-be perpetrators. And so a lot of our conversations have been focusing around, not around don't commit GBV, but why do we have these high levels of violence in our country?
Lebogang, let me bring you in. A couple of days ago, as we are focusing.
Why are men?
As we are focusing so much on GBV, I spoke to a researcher who, warned that we shouldn't take simplistic approaches to this very complex thing that is GBV and femicide. Where do you think the conversation needs to start? Some have suggested even as far back as, primary school, and parents need to step up. Teachers need to step up, and we need to have these conversations, these difficult conversations with children as young as 5, 6, 7. Where do you think, we should be pitching this very serious and complex matter?
What the colleague said is right. We shouldn't be looking at preventative measures and curative measures, which most of the time we do look at as a country. We look at what should be done after. What she's saying is absolutely right. All of our programs right now in South Africa are generally focused on empowering women, and studies have shown that has led in an increase in gender-based violence. The more that we are empowering young women and girls, the more that men are feeling emasculated. So we do need to start as early as in the home. I was explaining to a friend of mine that I already teach my children that a no is a no, even if you're trying to show love. So if my son is trying to hug my daughter and she says no, he needs to understand that means no. So from as early as home, we shouldn't wait until they're in high school or whatever to start these conversations. We need to start them as early as possible to introduce to children that this is what a man acts like, this is what a woman acts like in terms of abuse and so on, but also teaching them that respecting somebody else's body, respecting somebody else's boundary, and that needs to start as early as we can.
Now, Lebogang, I mean, we saw just very recently the brutal murder of Nosicelo Mtebeni, where her body was chopped up and put in a suitcase. And then we heard from her friends and some of the things that they were saying about her, that she was focused, that she was strong. What is it about these characteristics in women, do men feel threatened by, and leads them, to them being objectified as women, and almost, you want to own the person. I mean, I'm talking about Nosicelo was only 23 years old. Her boyfriend, who is accused of this heinous crime, was only 25 years old. What is it about women who are strong threatens men?
I think we do need to start looking at the psychology behind everything that is going on. Our society has been broken down into terms where a man no longer feels that he is a man unless he can exert some sort of force on a woman. And because women now are empowered and they're the breadwinners, or they're this young lady was studying, and it's not the first person that we're seeing that is studying to better her life, to better her opportunities, and she gets cut down in her prime by a man who felt that, no, I cannot let this woman outshine me. So we do need to start looking at mental health issues, mental imbalances that makes a man feel that if a woman is in a position of power, why does he feel that he is less of a man? That is connected to the toxic masculinity that we are talking about, that we need to change. We need to change men's understanding of what masculinity is, so he doesn't feel emasculated by the fact that a woman might be in a position of power. That is something that we need to look at. But we also need to pay more attention into mental health issues, because for somebody to be able to brutally murder somebody, chop them up, and still sit with a corpse within their home, that goes to show that there is something definitely wrong with these perpetrators that is not being addressed.
Now, your organization, Free World Initiative, you work very closely with communities. Talk to me about what are you seeing on the ground, and what are some of the conversations that you are having at that level?
I think the basic one is just trying to make men and women understand the basics of what is rape, what is consent. That is the biggest challenge, because most people don't even understand who can consent, what is consent, when can you consent. So breaking down education, people are not even understanding that they have been victims. When I look back, I officially got raped in 2019. But if I look back at cases before that, I hadn't realized that I had been raped in constant situations where a man didn't realize that I had said no, and he had convinced me to have sexual intercourse. That is a huge one. Also, the understanding that men need to change their mindset. We keep putting the responsibility on a woman on how to behave, how to keep safe. Don't drink. Don't wear revealing clothing. Always walk in groups. We keep putting the responsibility of keeping safe on a woman instead of putting it on a man to say that do not rape, that no means no. So those are the biggest challenges that we're having, the misunderstanding of what rape is, the misunderstanding of what consent is. But most importantly, we're putting the responsibility on women to keep themselves safe instead of putting the responsibility on men to act right, to not rape. That's all we are asking for. We are asking that men be aware of what they do and not rape us and not kill us. That's all we're asking for as women.
Vanita, I believe you are back with us. Now, I want to pick up on what Lebogang has said. As a director of Rise Up yourself, who are you asking to rise up? I know that you are in conversation with men as it relates to gender-based violence. Talk to me about the work that you are doing.
So our organization does three things mostly. First of all, we do the behavioral change programs, and so we talk to men. Mostly we talk to men. And the other thing that we do is we run an emergency evacuation service. So when victims and survivors are trapped in their homes and they can't leave, because we also know the most dangerous time for a survivor and a victim is when they actually decide to leave. And so we started this service during hard lockdown last year, where survivors can contact us. We will then activate the South African Police Service. They go with us, and we actually help the victims and survivors to actually pack their things, get themselves ready, and take them to either a shelter or a place of safety that they have identified. And our third main program that we run is a program for women who live and work on the street. We know that particular demographic is particularly vulnerable to gender-based violence. It happens to them on the daily in terms of, just trying to navigate the harsh life of living on the street. And so when we say rise up against gender-based violence, it's really a clarion call to society as a whole. And also, like the previous speaker said, we need to lay the burden of gender-based violence and femicide at the feet of men. And one of the other things that we call for is that, even though we run this emergency evacuation service, we are calling and advocating for men and perpetrators to be removed. Why should I uproot my life? Why should I be moved to a place of safety? Because you are the one that's beating me, raping me, and killing me. You should be the one that should be placed in a facility where we try and help you in terms of, dealing with your anger issues or whatever it is that is making you turn into a perpetrator.
Vanita and Lebogang, just as a final question as we wrap up our conversation, perhaps let me start with you, Vanita, just your closing remarks about how do we have these conversations with very young children about what is going on in this country in terms of gender-based violence and femicide? Where are parents responsible and what is their responsibility? Just very quickly, how do we bring this conversation to very young children so that we start having a very relaxed conversation, if I can say it that way, in terms of making children aware of what is happening in this country?
I think that as a starting block, we need to be looking at what are the things that children are being exposed to. And for me, one of the most important things is we need to start having conversations around creating a genderless society. And we need to start looking at things like, why do we say things like boys will do this and girls will do that? And that basis of thinking that we actually plant into the heads of our young children is what informs their behavior when they become adult men and adult women. And so, I don't have kids myself, but I do have engagements with a lot of children, and children understand. We just need to be able to use the correct language for them. And so I think it's incumbent upon parents, upon social formations such as churches and clubs, to have these conversations with young people, to have these conversations with children, because we are raising them for a world that is absolutely horrible at the moment. And we basically need to put all of our trust and faith in the next generation to come, because I don't see how we are going to stem the tide of gender-based violence in the country at the moment, to be honest.
Lebogang, your closing remarks?
Well, I have to agree with everything that she said, but what I want to reiterate is the fact that we are living in a very sad and sick society. So no longer are we teaching our children about stranger danger, but we are teaching our children to be self-aware and aware of their bodies and what they feel comfortable with, as well as just being able to open up to an adult, to be able to talk about what is going on. We need to create a safe environment as parents for our children to be able to let us know what is happening, but also have that conversation with them that what is okay and what isn't. Have open talks about what sexuality is, what is correct and what is correct and what isn't correct, what is right and what isn't right, and then also inform them that they have to keep themselves safe from even somebody who may come across as a friend, so they can keep their body safe, and also have somebody that they can talk to. So open up these channels where they can talk, and they can talk to their parents and report what is going on at school, at home, or wherever it is, so we can keep our children safe. Most importantly, we need to remove the responsibility from the children, and we need to put it on parents and adults to say that children are off bounds. You cannot be looking at a child and looking at them in a sexual way. We need to start putting responsibility on the people who responsibility needs to be on, which are adults, which are men.
All right, Lebogang and Vanita, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, a very serious conversation there. Thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, that was Lebogang Motau, founder and CEO of Free World Initiative, as well as Vanita Daniels from Rise Up Against Gender-Based Violence. She's the director there.